Rain had a habit of revealing a person's true place in London, and on the bleak spring afternoon of 1817, it exposed precisely how small and unprepared she was for the city's relentless currents. She stepped down from the hackney with her reticule clutched to her chest, her bonnet already dampened, her gloves marked with the grime of Piccadilly's cobblestones. Hatchett's bookshop loomed before her, its windows glowing like warm lanterns in the grey deluge, yet she felt no comfort. She had been in London scarcely an hour, and already she sensed she had made a grave mistake in believing she could move invisibly through the capital's glittering machinery. Her cousin was meant to meet her. No cousin appeared. Gentlemen hurried past with their collars raised. Ladies under silk umbrellas rushed to waiting carriages. Footmen shouted orders, horses snorted, wheels splashed through puddles as wide as lakes. She stood uncertainly, avoiding every eye, hoping no one noticed the lost country girl braving Mayfair alone. The rain thickened, stinging her cheeks, and a gust threatened to lift her bonnet clean off. Desperate for shelter, she bolted toward the line of carriages that crowded the pavement, each polished vehicle belonging to families whose names echoed through the corridors of Almack's. She spotted a door open, dark maroon interior, velvet cushions, golden tassels, an unmistakable sign of wealth far beyond her world. But she was not thinking of wealth, only dryness and the embarrassment of being stranded in the middle of Piccadilly like a neglected parcel. She murmured an apology to no one in particular and climbed inside. The door closed behind her. A beat of silence. The scent of lavender sachets. The faint crackle of a heated brick beneath the seat. Then a voice, low and matured by authority, said, "My dear girl, unless you are here to rob me, you have chosen the wrong carriage." Her breath stopped. Across from her sat a woman of silver curls and sharp, discerning eyes that seemed to read one's thoughts before one dared form them. The Dowager Duchess of Wexmoor was unmistakable, even to someone who had never seen her in person. Her reputation in London was as storied as the season itself. A matchmaker, a strategist, a woman whose smile could open or close doors in the ton faster than any vote in Parliament. I beg your pardon," the young woman stammered. "I believed, well, the rain. I thought it was my cousin's carriage. I am terribly sorry." The dowager tilted her head. "Your cousin must be either blind or negligent to abandon you in weather fit only for sailors and fish." Her gaze sharpened, as though cataloguing every trembling detail. The modest pelisse, the rain-spotted reticule, the earnestness that could not be feigned. "Sit properly, my dear. If you intend to apologize, do so with a straight spine." She obeyed before she realized she had. Outside, London surged past, the carriage rocking as it joined the flow of traffic. Inside, the Duchess examined her with unnerving intensity, the way a botanist might study a rare bloom unexpectedly sprouted from common soil. "Name," the Duchess demanded, not rudely, but with the expectation of an answer. She gave it, wincing as she imagined the Duchess summoning her footman to throw her out into the rain. Instead, the older woman's expression changed, ever so slightly, but enough to unsettle her. Interest, curiosity, even the outline of a plan flickered through the Duchess's eyes. "You are not of the ton," the dowager said. "Your speech lacks pretense. Your posture, when you remember to straighten it, is naturally elegant. And those manners," she leaned forward, "those are not learned for display. Those are real." She swallowed. "Your Grace, I assure you, I meant no intrusion. If you simply let me down at the next corner." "Certainly not. You are soaked, unchaperoned, and perilously close to becoming gossip." The Duchess tapped her cane against the floor. "I despise wasted potential, my dear, particularly when it is dropped directly into my carriage." The girl blinked. "Potential, Your Grace?" "Oh, yes," the Duchess murmured. "My son needs a wife." The word struck the young woman with greater force than the storm outside. She opened her mouth to protest, but the Duchess raised a gloved hand. "Do not look so aghast. I am merely observing that the season is ghastly this year. Too many simpering girls, not enough substance. And then, behold, Providence delivers me a young lady of uncommon poise, whether she knows she possesses it or not." "I do not," she whispered. "Nonsense. Modesty is becoming, but ignorance is dull. And you, my dear, are not dull. The carriage halted briefly as a cluster of young society ladies passed by, peering in with unabashed curiosity. Their fans fluttered, whispers bloomed. The Duchess ignored them, but the girl felt heat rise along her neck. Already the city was inventing stories about her, about why a stranger of little fortune sat alone with the Dowager Duchess of Wexmoor. London's hunger for novelty could devour a young woman whole. "Do not fear them," the Duchess said, reading her unspoken panic. "Fear only living a life small enough for them to understand." The girl lowered her gaze, overwhelmed not by arrogance but by the unfamiliar kindness woven through the Dowager's sternness. She had come to London hoping to disappear. Instead, she had stepped directly into a storm fiercer than the rain. The carriage slowed before the Wexmoor residence, a grand townhouse of sandstone elegance and wrought iron gates. Footmen hurried forward, umbrellas raised. "Your Grace, please, this must be a misunderstanding." "Indeed," the Duchess said. "The misunderstanding is that you believe you do not belong here." A footman opened the door. The girl remained frozen. "Come," the Dowager urged. "You have caught London's attention, whether you intended to or not. Best to face it from within a duchess's walls rather than from the street." The young woman exhaled, trembling. She stepped down. Unbeknownst to her, on the opposite pavement, a tall man in a dark greatcoat paused beneath the eaves of a church. His eyes, storm-colored, solemn, bearing the quiet warning of a soldier who had seen too much, lifted to the sight of his mother escorting a strange girl into the house. He stiffened. The returning Duke of Wexmoor had just witnessed the beginning of a scandal with his name on it. Morning light spilled through the high windows of Wexmoor House like liquid gold, revealing the grandeur the young woman had only ever read about in borrowed novels. She stood at the threshold of the Duchess's private sitting-room, still stiff with disbelief, still wearing the same travel-creased pelisse from the day before. Servants glided around her with the well-trained elegance of a household accustomed to aristocracy, yet each glance slid toward her with cautious curiosity, as though attempting to decipher the nature of her presence. Guest, protégé, intrusion? No one dared ask, for the Dowager's orders carried a gravity that discouraged speculation aloud. "My dear," the Duchess called from her writing desk without turning, "step forward. I am not accustomed to raising my voice for anyone before noon." She moved closer, hands clasped tightly before her. "Your Grace, are you certain I should remain? I fear my presence might cause talk," the Duchess finished, finally looking up. "My dear, talk is the currency of London. Best to spend it before others spend it on you." With a simple gesture, the Dowager summoned a maid carrying a long, wrapped bundle. Silk whispered as it was unrolled across the settee, pale blue fabric shimmering in the light, delicate embroidery tracing its hem like frost patterns on winter glass. The girl blinked. "For me." "For Almack's," the Duchess replied. "You cannot enter the most exclusive assembly rooms in Europe wearing the gown you arrived in. Even your sincerity would not be enough to distract the patronesses from their distaste." "Almack's," she echoed, nearly choking on the word. "But I have no voucher." The Duchess waved a hand. "I do not collect influence simply to let it gather dust. One of the patronesses owed me a favor. Now she owes me too." A tremor of panic rippled through her. "Your Grace, I am not. I do not belong among London's elite." "That is precisely why you must be seen," the Duchess said. "Fresh air in a suffocating room always causes a stir. And my son, stubborn creature that he is, may yet lift his eyes if given the right reason." Her breath caught. "Your Grace, the Duke and I have not even been introduced." "Which is another problem I intend to remedy," the Duchess announced, sealing a letter with a firm stamp. "Before the tongue can accuse you of scheming, I shall present you as I choose, a lady under my protection." The words carried both promise and peril, for protection in London often implied ownership. Still, the Duchess's conviction left little room for resistance. By late afternoon, a carriage drew them to King Street, where Almack's facade glowed with the excitement of a Wednesday assembly. She felt the heartbeat of London there, the carriages, the powdered footmen, the rustle of silk and taffeta, the anticipation of dances whose choices could seal or ruin futures. The Duchess walked with unhurried authority, her cane tapping rhythmically as the crowd parted before her. The girl remained a half-step behind, her new gown whispering against her skin like a foreign language she had not yet learned to speak. Inside, the assembly room shone beneath crystal chandeliers, their brilliance reflected on every polished surface. Music floated through the air like a fragile spell. Conversations hushed when the Duchess entered, and dozens of eyes flicked toward the unfamiliar young woman escorted at her side. Whispers ignited instantly. Who is she? A country nobody. But look, Wexmoor's mother brought her. Is this the one they say he is to marry? She is far too plain. He would never. The young woman felt heat rising along her neck. Her hands trembled. Yet the Duchess merely gave her a reassuring nod. The kind that suggested panic was a luxury reserved for lesser households. She forced herself to inhale, drawing in the mingled scents of beeswax, perfume, and expectation. She was introduced to matrons, to gentlemen, to a pair of patronesses who examined her with the same scrutiny they might reserve for imported porcelain. Some comments were polite, others pointed, but all were measured, London society revealing its nature by degrees, waiting to see whether she would flinch. Then the music softened, signaling the arrival of a late guest. Across the room, the Duke of Wexmoor appeared. He was taller than she expected, broad-shouldered, his posture straight but tinged with the rigidity of long discipline. His dark hair brushed the collar of his coat, and his face bore the faint, pale scars of battles fought far from ballrooms and chandeliers. His eyes swept the crowd with detached precision, neither seeking admiration nor deflecting it. London had whispered that war had carved him into a man apart. Now she understood the truth of it. He paused when his gaze found her. Not curiosity, not surprise, recognition, but of what she could not fathom. The Duchess lifted her chin. There. He has noticed. The Duke crossed the room at a measured pace. Each step drew a hush tighter around them. Gentlemen turned away, pretending not to stare. Ladies clutched their fans in collective anticipation. The girl felt a sudden, disorienting pull, as though the floor itself shifted beneath her. He stopped before them and bowed. "Mother." "Wexmoor," the Duchess replied. "You are late. The house delayed me." He straightened, his gaze settling on the young woman again, far more intently than before. "You have not introduced your companion." "Oh, I was under the impression London already invented 4 different stories about her," the Duchess murmured dryly. "Nevertheless, this is Miss." But the Duke lifted a hand slightly, stopping her. His eyes fixed on the girl, cool yet carrying a depth that unsettled her. "I know who she is," he said quietly. The Duchess's brows rose. "Do you, indeed?" A flicker of something unreadable crossed his face. Memory, perhaps, or curiosity sharpened into something more dangerous. "I passed by this morning," he said, "and saw you bring her into the house. I assumed you had devised another of your schemes." "Scheme?" the Duchess scoffed. "This is Providence." The girl struggled to find her voice. "Your Grace, I assure you, this is all a dreadful misunderstanding. I did not intend. You stepped into my mother's carriage." His words were soft yet carried the weight of inevitability. "London will not believe it was an accident." Her breath faltered. He leaned slightly closer, the faint scent of rain lingering in his coat. "If you intend to survive the next fortnight," he murmured, "you must learn how this city feeds." She swallowed. "Feeds on what, Your Grace?" His expression hardened with something like warning. "On the undoing of the unprepared." She stood frozen, the music swelling behind them, her future narrowing into a dangerous, glittering corridor she had not chosen. Then the Duke extended his arm, publicly, unmistakably, irrevocably. "Shall we give them something worth whispering about?" he said. And as every eye fixed upon them, she realized London's storm had only just begun. The conservatory at Wexmoor House was a sanctuary of glass and shadow, its tall windows glistening with the remnants of a recent rain. Lanterns flickered along the walls, casting trembling reflections across the leaves of exotic plants the Duke had brought back from Portugal, silent witnesses to a man who preferred the company of the living things he could not disappoint. It was here he had asked her to meet him after the assembly, and she entered with her pulse fluttering like a trapped bird beneath her ribs. His figure stood near the far window, outlined by moonlight, shoulders squared as though facing an enemy he could neither strike nor evade. "You came," he said without turning. "I was asked," she replied softly. A faint sound left him, half amused, half resigned. "My mother has a talent for arranging outcomes she desires. I imagine you know that now." She stepped forward, careful not to disturb the delicate ferns on either side. "I never intended to become the subject of her ambitions, Your Grace. Had I known whose carriage I entered, you would have fled?" He turned then, and the quiet intensity of his gaze pinned her as securely as any hand. "Yes, I suspect you would have. But London has a way of choosing stories for us before we can choose them for ourselves." His coat was unbuttoned, revealing a waistcoat of dark blue that emphasized the breadth of his chest. The moon caught the sharp angles of his face, softening none of them. Even in stillness, he carried the tension of someone accustomed to danger lurking just beyond sight. "I do not know how to navigate these stories," she admitted. "Everyone at Almack's looked at me as if I had committed a crime." "You did," he murmured. "You entered the season without armor." She blinked, startled. "Armor, Your Grace? It is not worn on the body. It is made of posture, wit, reputation, layers of distance one builds to keep the world from guessing how close it stands to breaking you." There was something raw beneath his words, something unspoken and trembling at the edges. "I do not wish to deceive anyone," she said. He studied her for a long moment. "That," he whispered, "is precisely why you are in danger." His footsteps echoed as he moved to a small table near the center of the conservatory. A decanter of wine rested there, untouched. His hand hovered above it but did not reach. "Miss," he paused, searching her face. "This arrangement my mother imagines. It is not a harmless diversion. London will turn you into a symbol long before it sees you as a person." "I am aware," she said quietly. "But I did not choose this." "No, but it has chosen you." He exhaled, a weary breath that seemed pulled from some deep, unresolved place. "And I must decide whether to reject the chaos or—" He stopped himself. "Or what?" she asked. He looked away, toward the rain-streaked glass. "Or protect you from it." Silence settled between them, thick, searching, strangely intimate. She felt the tug of something shifting beneath the night's quiet surface, like a tide turning. "Why would you protect me, Your Grace?" she asked finally. His answer took several seconds, as though each word carried freight heavier than he wished to reveal. "Because," he said, "I know too well what it means to be hunted by stories you never volunteered to live." Her breath caught. For the first time, she glimpsed not the Duke the city whispered about, but the man shaped by years that had carved strength into bone and sorrow into silence. He moved to a bench carved with ivy motifs, gesturing for her to sit. She did so cautiously, leaving space between them. Yet the air felt charged, as though every leaf above bent slightly closer to listen. "I will tell you something," he said. "But you must promise not to burden my mother with it." "I would never betray a confidence," she replied. He nodded once, then spoke with the stillness of someone reopening an old wound to prove it had not healed. "During the first year of the war, I was engaged." Her heart thudded. She had not expected this. She was lovely, and brave in the way society rewards, never in the way society requires. He gave a humorless smile. "When I was wounded at Badajoz, news reached England. She wrote to end the engagement. She wished, she said, to remember me as I had been, not as what I had become." "That is cruel," she whispered. "No," he replied. "It was honest. Too honest, perhaps." He folded his hands. "After that, I decided affection was a luxury I could not manage. And marriage—" his jaw tightened. "Marriage became a battlefield I refused to enter." Her gaze softened with understanding rather than pity, a distinction he felt immediately. "I am sorry," she said. "Loss does not vanish simply because we will it to." He closed his eyes briefly, as though steadying something fragile within. "You speak as though you know loss." "I do," she said. Mine was smaller, less dramatic. But it taught me that quiet heartbreak is no less real than the kind shouted in ballrooms. Their eyes met, two lives stitched by different sorrows, yet somehow threaded in a moment neither had expected. He leaned forward slightly. "Miss, the world is already telling a story about you and me. If we do nothing, it will escalate. If we stand together, it will still escalate, only differently." "What are you saying?" she asked. "That we must navigate this spectacle side by side," he said softly. "Not as suitors. Not as lovers. As allies." "Allies," she repeated, as though testing the weight of the word. He extended his hand. "Not for a kiss, not for a dance, but as an offer. If you trust me with your truth," he said, "I will trust you with mine." She hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. Warmth spread through her fingers, unexpected and unsettling. The conservatory door creaked. A footman stepped inside, pale with urgency. "Your Grace, news from Parliament. There is a rumor circulating. A grave one." The Duke's expression shifted, becoming colder, sharper. "What rumor?" The footman swallowed. They say she schemed her way into your mother's carriage to entrap you." The girl froze. And the Duke, rising with sudden, dangerous calm, whispered, "Then the war has already begun." London awoke the next morning with the ruthless appetite of a beast deprived of entertainment for too long. Rumor, always quick-footed, had multiplied overnight. By sunrise, whispers slithered from drawing-rooms to gentlemen's clubs, from milliners to Parliament corridors, sharpening with each retelling. The mysterious young woman had orchestrated her carriage accident, had thrust herself upon the Dowager Duchess of Wexmoor, had set her sights, brazenly, on the Duke himself. And though lies were London's most common currency, this particular one had been minted with unusual speed and precision. Someone wanted her ruined. She learned of it while seated in the Duchess's breakfast-room, trying to swallow tea that suddenly tasted of salt and dread. The Dowager's face remained a mask of carved dignity, but her knuckles whitened around her spoon. "This is no ordinary gossip," she murmured. "This is aimed deliberately. Someone hopes Wexmoor will withdraw from society rather than defend you." The girl's breath trembled. "Your Grace, I never wished to cause your family trouble." "My dear," the Duchess replied, "trouble is the lifeblood of any great house. It is weakness we cannot abide." She touched the girl's hand briefly, her voice softening. "But I fear weakness is precisely what they believe you possess." Before she could ask more, the butler appeared. "Your Grace, the Duke requests Mrs. Presence in the West Garden. He insists upon urgency." The girl rose at once, skirts whispering like anxious birds. The Dowager gave a firm nod. "Go. And remember, Wexmoor is a man who grew used to commanding armies. But sometimes the battlefield he fears most is the one with only two people standing in it." The West Garden shimmered beneath a hesitant morning sun. Blossoms trembled in the breeze, their perfume mingling with the earthy scent left behind by last night's rain. The Duke stood near the iron archway laden with roses, boots damp from pacing. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, and she saw immediately that he had slept little. His expression was taut, controlled only by force of will. "You heard," he said. She nodded. "Everyone seems to have heard." He looked away, jaw tightening. "They are attempting to paint you as a trap, a schemer. They believe I will retreat from scandal rather than stand beside a woman I barely know." "Perhaps they are right," she said quietly, ashamed of the fear streaking her voice. He stepped closer, shadows shifting across his face. "Do you truly believe that of me?" Her lips parted, but no words came. The Duke inhaled, steadying something fraying at the edges. "London feeds upon easy prey. Whoever began this intends to remind me of old wounds. They hope I will abandon you as I was once abandoned." Her heart ached with quiet understanding. "I do not wish to be another burden you must endure." "You are not a burden," he said sharply, surprising them both. He softened his tone. What you are is unprotected. And that, miss, is intolerable. A gardener approached, hat in hand, bowing respectfully. Your Grace, beg your pardon. Crowds gather beyond the gate. They say a pamphlet's been passed round, sir. About the lady. The Duke stiffened. Give it to me. The gardener hesitated, then offered a folded sheet. The Duke opened it, fury draining the color from his cheeks. The caricature etched upon the paper was a cruel exaggeration, a wide-eyed girl clutching a carriage door, heart-shaped locks snaring a duke drawn with mocking heroism. Beneath it, printed lines accused her of cunning ambition, of snaring the war-torn duke with feigned innocence, of ascending by deception rather than merit. She felt the world tilt. My reputation is finished. No, he said fiercely. It is assaulted. That is not the same thing. Her vision blurred. Your Grace, I cannot allow you to attach yourself to this scandal. Your standing. My standing is irrelevant, he cut in. Yours is what matters now. She looked up, startled. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I have spent years letting London dictate how much of myself I show. But I refuse to let them dictate what becomes of you. Before she could respond, murmurs rippled behind them. Ladies in pastel gowns approached along the garden's path, accompanied by chaperones whose disapproval hung like a fog. As they passed, the women dipped curtsy only to the Duke, deliberately excluding her. One muttered, loud enough to wound, "Imagine preying upon a wounded hero." She flinched. The Duke's temper snapped like dry tinder. "Ladies," he said coldly, "you insult a guest of Wexmoor House." Their eyes widened. Scandalous, unheard of. But they recovered quickly, offering syrupy smiles designed to wound twice. "We meant no slight, Your Grace. One simply cannot be too careful whom one acknowledges." Anger darkened his gaze. "Then acknowledge this. Any slight to her is a challenge to me." The ladies retreat quickly, rattled. As their parasols vanished around the hedge, the girl whispered, "You should not have said that." "I should have said it sooner," he replied. She trembled, overwhelmed by the weight of his defense, and the quiet danger in it. He stepped closer, voice low enough to claim the air between them. "Miss, listen carefully. London will not forgive you for stepping into that carriage. But they will fear you if I stand at your side." Her pulse thundered. "Why would they fear me?" "Because they know," he said, "that I protect what matters to me." She drew a trembling breath. "And do I?" He did not allow her to finish, for his expression betrayed more than he wished. Fear, desire, hesitation, promise. Emotions he had not permitted himself in years. But he stepped back abruptly, as though wrestling something dangerous inside him. "I must go," he said. "There is a meeting at Whitehall. I will not let this stand. Your Grace, what will you do?" "Whatever is necessary." He moved past her, leaving the scent of rain and iron in his wake. But at the threshold, he paused. "Miss, if I fail today, they will tear you apart." His voice softened, unexpectedly raw. "But if I succeed, London will never dare whisper against you again." Her breath caught. "And if you do neither?" He turned his head slightly, the faintest crack in his armor. "Then I will choose the only path left." "What path is that?" she breathed. He said nothing. But as he strode away, coat billowing behind him, she realized with a jolt that the path he feared most, the one he refused to name, was the one that led directly to her. And fate, relentless as London's gossip, had already begun steering him toward it. The sky over London darkened long before evening, as though the city itself sensed a reckoning approaching. Carriages rattled along wet cobblestones, carrying murmurs, questions, and the sharpened interest of a society that fed on spectacle. But inside Wexmoor House, silence pooled in the corridors like a held breath. She stood at the window of the morning room, watching the first lanterns flicker to life along the street, each flame trembling in the wind. The Duke had been gone since dawn, and every passing hour carved deeper lines of worry into her thoughts. She tried reading, then stitching, then walking, but nothing anchored her. She could not decide which possibility frightened her more, that he would succeed or that he would fail. For either outcome tied her fate to his in ways she still barely understood. The dowager watched her with the unsettling perceptiveness of a woman who had weathered decades of scandal, loss, and triumph without blinking. "My son is many things," she said finally, breaking the silence. "But he is not a coward. If London wishes to provoke him, they shall learn the cost of their sport." The girl folded her trembling hands. "I did not wish for any of this, Your Grace." "Few women ever wish for the turning points that define them," the Duchess replied gently. "They arrive all the same." A knock sounded at the door. A footman entered, his expression taut. "Your Grace, a crowd has gathered outside. They say the Duke has returned." The dowager's gaze flickered. Satisfaction, worry, something deeper. "Go to him," she told the girl quietly, "before he reaches the steps alone." Her heart raced as she descended the grand staircase, her slippers brushing against polished stone. Through the tall front windows she saw a cluster of Londoners pressed along the gates, reporters, gossip-seekers, curious rivals, each waiting for spectacle. And at the center of the courtyard stood the Duke, rain on his coat, exhaustion etched into every line of him. Beside him, a carriage door hung open, swaying in the wind like an omen. She pushed through the door before any servant could reach it. "Your Grace," she breathed. He turned toward her, and the sight stopped her heart. His hair was damp, his cravat loosened, his gloves marked with ink from hastily signed documents. But it was his eyes, storm-dark, unguarded, that froze her in place. "It is done," he said, voice low, hoarse with the effort of containing everything he'd endured. "The pamphleteer confessed. He was paid to ruin you. And by someone with influence enough to protect him unless confronted directly." She stepped closer. "Who would?" "A man who once sought my sister's hand," he answered. "He lost her to another, blamed us, and seized upon your presence as an opportunity for revenge. I confronted him. He will not repeat his mistake." She exhaled shakily. "Then my name is cleared?" His jaw tightened. "In the eyes of the law, yes. In the eyes of society, not yet." A gust of wind swept between them, scattering droplets from the eaves. The gathered crowd watched with predatory anticipation, waiting for some sign, humiliation, dismissal, collapse. The Duke glanced toward them, then back to her, something fierce awakening behind his stern control. "You should not be out here alone," he murmured. "Nor should you," she replied, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. A quiet, stunned laugh escaped him, as though she had said something profoundly unexpected. "You continue to unsettle me," he whispered. "I have not decided whether that is a blessing or a danger." She felt heat flood her cheeks. "I never wished to unsettle you, Your Grace." "But you have," he said, "since the moment you stepped into my mother's carriage." Her breath caught, for the tone he used, soft, reverent, aching, frayed the last of her composure. She searched his face, and for the first time, he did not hide. The exhaustion, the fear of losing control, the strange, startling tenderness, she saw all of it. "I went to Whitehall prepared to defend you," he said. "But I did not expect to find myself defending more than your reputation." "What more is there?" she whispered. He stepped closer, close enough that the world narrowed to the space between them. "My own heart, it seems. I had convinced myself it was beyond repair. Yet today, when they spoke of you, when they maligned your character, when they dared to make you small," his voice roughened, "I realized I could not bear it." Tears stung her eyes. "I do not know what to say." "Say nothing," he whispered. "Just hear me." The gate rattled, murmurs rising as the crowd sensed something momentous blooming beneath the storm. Footmen shifted uncertainly on the steps. The dowager watched from the doorway, her hand pressed to her chest. He took the girl's hands in his, warm despite the rain. "I cannot ask for your affection. I have no right to it. And I cannot offer you certainty, for life has taught me that promises shatter more easily than glass." He swallowed, each word carved from truth. "But I can offer you this. If you wish it, I will stand between you and every lie, every whisper, every shadow cast by those who fear your light." Her tears slipped free. "And if I do not wish it?" A wry, pained smile touched his mouth. "Then I will walk away, Mississippi. But I warn you, if I walk away now, I may never stop." The world held still. The wind, the rain, the restless crowd, all of it faded beneath the weight of the moment pressing between them. She searched his face for doubt, for hesitation, for the remnants of the man who had claimed he would never love again. She found none. "Your Grace," she whispered, "I do not want you to walk away." Something inside him broke, not in ruin, but in release. His shoulders sagged, his breath trembled, and for the first time she saw him unarmored. He lifted her hands to his lips, not as the Duke's society revered, but as a man who had finally ceased to run. The crowd gasped. London had its spectacle, but the Duke had his truth. Before she could speak again, he turned, slow, deliberate, and faced the sea of watchers beyond the gate. His voice carried like thunder over water. "Her honor," he declared, "is tied to mine. Insult her, and you insult the house of Wexmoor. Question her worth, and you question my judgment. Let there be no mistake. She stands beneath my protection." The courtyard erupted with startled murmurs. Reporters scrambled to write. Ladies whispered behind gloved hands. Gentlemen exchanged glances heavy with calculation. The season shifted on its axis. He looked back at her, breathless with the enormity of what he had done. "Miss, whatever comes next, we face it together." But before she could answer, a footman rushed forward, pale as parchment. "Your Grace," he gasped. "A message from the Crown. Urgent. They request your presence immediately." The Duke's expression darkened, and he released her hands reluctantly. The storm was not over. It had only changed shape.